Bailey Armour and Scott Shapiro here from First Bet to chat about an exciting Saturday card of racing at Churchill Downs this week. I know that was your stomping grounds for a while, Scott. It's definitely mine, especially with some horses that are shipping in from Keeneland, who are headlined by that big stake, the Chicago, the grade 3. I believe that is race number 6, race number 7. Race number 7 at 3:40 p.m. So it shouldn't be too hot, which is definitely nice because it's been blazing here in Kentucky this week. How's the weather up in New Jersey for you?
It's been warm and it's supposed to be like a heat check. I think I'm getting your weather here. It's been like in the 90s, but we've got that like the heat index warning or whatever starting tomorrow. So I'm getting that bluegrass air headed my way because I missed it so much. But
Yeah.
this is a fun card, like you said, my old stomping ground. Sometimes, it's a place where I feel comfortable wagering on most cards more than some other places just because I'm so familiar with the horses, the trainers, the track and whatnot. But I found this, the later part of the card on Saturday to be really high quality. You mentioned the grade 3 Chicago, which we'll get into in a moment, but the last 4 races are really competitive and a fun way to close out the Saturday card.
All right. Now, before we get into that big late in the day action like we discussed, I know I've got a race that I want to tell you about. I think you might have a race you want to tell me about. Let's tell everyone else about the Chicago before we dive into that action. We've got 7 furlongs on the dirt, fillies, 4-year-old and older. Of course, the big beast from Cherie DeVaux's barn, Vava, is entered in the number 3 post right in the middle of that field of 5. What do you think about Vava?
Well, I love this filly. I've been a fan of her from the get-go. She, has that nice mid-pack stalking style. She seems to oftentimes draw favorably towards the outside, or at least outside the speeds. But she meets a tough test here after that win in the Derby City Distaff in Society, who's drawn towards the inside. First start since the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint. And you see some underwhelming efforts from the Gunrunner mare last year and even earlier, but most of those are at 2 turns. She's been really tough at 1 turn, and I think she looks like complete lone speed in here. Now, with both of these, the Philly Vava and the Mare Gunrunner Society, you've got to ask yourself a question. This is a grade 3. I would think they're pulling the Ballerina at Saratoga. I'm not 100% sure, and maybe the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint in the end. I think both of them are using this as a springboard, particularly Society, who hasn't run since last November. So you got to have, kind of bring that into the mix, which makes things even that much tougher.
That's the way I looked at it as well, especially like you mentioned, taking this one as a jumping start into the Ballerina up north at beautiful Saratoga. Bava is the horse that I'm on in this race. I do think that Society will probably set the pace, but the way that Bava has run historically, she likes to sit just behind him and then kind of clinch it right at the end. So I think that's probably how things will play out on Saturday. I know that I'm going to key her over the number 1 Society, and then the number 4 Chi-Town Lady just to her outside. Pretty deep closers, so we'll see how the track is playing that day. It's kind of towards the end of the card, so that would influence my decision kind of that way, but it's definitely Vava over Society for me.
Totally understandable. It's one of those races where I think if you're playing the pick 5 or the pick 6, pick 3, whatever it might be, you want to take a stand. You don't want to use both of them. It's okay maybe to use one of them and then one of the prices if you want to use Chi-Town Lady, for instance, in horizontals, but I wouldn't use both of them. I'm still kind of narrowing it down, but I will have my late pick 5 blog out for this card tomorrow morning. So a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, or not so much of a spoiler, a little bit of a tease.
There you go. A teaser for that late pick 5. We'll definitely have to check that out. Now, moving on from the Chicago, I know that you mentioned there's some really good action later in the card. What has caught your eye this Saturday at Churchill?
Yeah, the maiden special weight races are always some of my favorite races there. Of course, we've got the 2-year-old racing at Churchill Downs in the fall, Stars of Tomorrow 1 and 2. These are some 3-year-olds and up fillies and mares in this mile and a 16th race. And I'm against the 3-to-1 favorite Genetics, who's hit the board in 4 of her 5 starts. She ran a decent second last out to a really good Paulo Lobo firster, but it seems like there's always someone better. She's burned a lot of money thus far, and I think there's a couple of second-time starters that are going to move forward here and be tough. Queen of Paris is the 7, daughter of Tappet, Godolphin, and Brad Cox. Didn't get out of the gates well, but very well bred, should move forward here, galloped out well, gone 7 furlongs, stretches out to the mile and a 16th. And Penny Royal will be a better price as Steve Asmussen, Stone Street homebred that didn't run quite as well on debut, finished an underwhelming 5th, but that was the race where Proud Crossing, the Lobo first that I mentioned, dominated. And I think it was just kind of a prep to set her up for a big effort in her first try at 2 turns. So Queen of Paris and Penny Royal for me in the 8th race, I'm really looking forward to.
See, this is why I love when we talk about maiden specials, because I do not like maiden specials at all. And I know you love them and you're so good at them. So I don't even have to worry about it. And I can just listen to you and I'm set.
If I wrote a book, if I ever write a book or wrote a book, it would definitely be on handicapping maiden special weight events. It's the races I've had the most success with, and I just have a lot of fun kind of dissecting. A lot of people get frustrated with first-time starters, having to include them. I love looking up, trainer intent and the pedigrees, and then I like really diving into the replays and seeing which horses I think will move forward out of them and maybe will be better prices than some of the ones that ran better in their first or second starts.
I think first time starters are always so tricky for me because I really like to watch replays, or I mean, you can see some in workouts, but not quite as much as you can see a horse perform on race day. And for me, a horse in the paddock, a horse on the track, the actual horse's form is what I take into account in my handicapping, not just on paper. So when they're a first time starter, you're like, well, I have nothing to go off. I guess
but it's still there's data. There's data. It's just not on that particular horse's running. There's data on trainer intent. I think all that stuff, it's a little bit more of a wild card, if you will, or a little more of an unknown. But I think sometimes that can present better value. And I oftentimes really like finding horses that maybe run second or third a lot and take a lot of money. The example is genetics in that race that you can maybe toss particularly on top in some of these, horizontal sequences.
Well, thankfully, I did not pick a maiden special to handicap this Saturday. I went to the 10th race, just 2 after this one. This is a 6 furlong allowance optional on the dirt. We've got a couple interesting horses and some jockey changes in here that really caught my eye. So starting out, we've got the number 6 horse Confidence Game, who was a 10th place finisher in last year's Derby for the Keith Ormo barn, and James Graham rides. They just ran this horse 8 days ago in a 5.5 turf sprint at Churchill. That was his first and only start on turf, which I thought was kind of interesting. Tells me he's in pretty good form and just ready to run. He's run off of not super long layoffs before, but this is his first time cutting back in 8 days. So once he gets on track, like I said, I can't wait to see what he looks like actually in the paddock and on the track at Churchill. James Graham rides this horse, comes off of the number 9 Surveillance, which puts Jose Ortiz on Surveillance, who comes off of the number 4 Eyewitness, which is my pick, who pulls in Jamie Torres to ride, who won the Preakness this year on Seize the Gray. He's like 25, 26 years old. That was his first grade 1 win, but I think he's a super gutsy rider, and I'm really excited to follow his career, including on this price horse on Saturday. So Eyewitness is 12-1 for the Kyle Karamori barn. Usually runs off of a 45 to 60 day layoff, has run against some tougher horses in this field, I think. So I'm going to key him with Confidence Game, Champlin, number 7, and then, of course, the big Asmussen horse, Scotland, in this race as well. So I'm going a little bit deep, but not mad about it.
Look at you, 12-1 shot as your key. And this is an interesting colt, $205,000 purchase at the Keeneland sale just down the street from you back in April. So that's the Horses of All Racing sale. So George Sharp, who's the owner, seems like he gives all of his stock these days to Kyle Karamori. This New York bred was in the Wesley Ward barn, raced all over the country and all different sorts of surfaces, but ran a good second last out. And the one thing I'll say in your corner is I don't see a lot of speed in here. Off the layoff, this horse has shown speed before, a short break. I think Eyewitness has a chance to take them all the way at a good price for you.
Yeah, I used to live next door to George Sharp, and I worked for Kyle's father, Eduardo, on the racetrack several years ago. So I know this entire family and the owner pretty well. Yeah, I know the crew, hometown folks. I know that George has taken a lot of his focus in racing from California back to Kentucky, especially to Kyle's barn, and they've had a ton of success together. Multiple stakes horses, super good, Kentucky Downs, Churchill, Keeneland, whatever. So this is a combo when it comes up that I'm always going to take a look at.
Well, you should get a good price. I don't know if you'll get 12-1 when you look around and there's not a lot of speed. And if, there's kind of word out this horse is ready to run, but probably going to get a little bit of an inflation with the previously trained by Wesley Ward, which can oftentimes scare bettors away when they see moving out of 30% barns, which is understandable, but it doesn't mean this one's not capable.
No, definitely not. Well, I am for sure excited to see what price I can get on Eyewitness. Excited to see how your maiden special shakes out. And of course, looking forward to Vava and the Society matchup in the Chicago Stakes at Churchill on Saturday. I know that I'll be playing. I know that Scott will be playing. And you can find his late pick 5 ticket on Express Bet and First Bet.